try everything. They tried some things work better than others. Some things that work for them may not work for you. Some things that don't work for them may work for you. Go ahead and try it, right? And the second is they've introduced a whole new concept to all of Serbia called endowment, right? And everything they learn is available to you, and all of the people that they've reached with this message, they are also available to you. So if you come and say, we are raising fund for our endowment, they won't say, what? They'll say, oh, yes. You can say, oh, like Trog did. So everything one of you does benefits the others. Okay, we're going to take some very important pieces now. So now we're going to talk about all of the options of generating your own, all the other additional options of generating your own revenues. You've heard pieces of this from our two presenters. One you haven't heard, I don't think, is membership dues. Okay? So one form that may be appropriate, and this may be something for you guys who have the more amorphous missions as well, is membership dues. Building a constituency of people who are members of your organization. Now, members, I don't mean in a legal sense, okay? I know that there are legal meanings of members. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about people who are signing on because they believe in your organization, and also because they're going to get something of value back. And that's the tricky part. The value back is the tricky part. Now, I'll give you some classic examples. Probably the most classic example that I'm familiar with in my part of the world is the big universities in my backyard in North Carolina. Were they best known nationally for their academic excellence? Actually, no. Even though they were academically excellent, what they were best known for was their basketball teams, right? So we had, where I lived, Duke University, the University of North Carolina State University, and most of the NBA players, with the exception of a handful of Serbians and a handful of Africans, come from these university programs, right? And so the university programs are a big deal, and the universities create membership programs, and people donate, literally will donate $100,000 a year to be members of the university's athletic club. And what do they get in return? Tickets to the basketball games. Tickets to the basketball games. So people will donate $100,000 a year to be members, and some people, I mean, not everybody donates at that level. The people who donate at that level get courtside seats in the middle, right? People who donate less get seats further away and further on the sides. But that's what they get. Now, you know, you have to be creative. Organizations like the Nature Conservancy, you might get to go on a trip with them, or you might just get a magazine for a minimal level of contribution. It's always a creative process of thinking what would be of value to the constituents that you're working with, to develop, to encourage them to be members. And a membership program like an annual giving program, what happened here, is one that is ongoing and you have to request every year. I'm not going to go through all of these. Fees for services. This is something to be thoughtful and creative about. You may not have recognized it, but you heard Tanya talk about fees for services. And their services are directly related to their mission. They are providing grant-making services for companies. So what have they done? They've said, what are we doing anyway? What's the capacity that our staff has anyway? And how can we sell this to a company, right? There are 100 ways of thinking about how we can do this. I worked with a group in East Berlin, and they were a youth services. They worked with youth. And what they did was contract with the local government to train and provide youth who could work as volunteers in the government agencies. So they provided kind of a workforce, and it benefited their mission because the youth were getting leadership and job experience. And it benefited the public sector because they had more person power working in their organizations. So be thinking about what is it you do already and what is it you could provide to other entities for a fee. Obviously, you have to figure out whether the costs outweigh the benefits and look at what your capacities are and try not to have this service that you're providing divert you from your core mission. I'm going really fast here. Hope you're getting the pieces. Revenues from physical assets. Did you hear that? Did you hear that in the previous presentations? All right, both of them, were you given your property?
Yeah, from the same donor, as I mentioned, that left 20,000 euros for the endowment. So
Okay.
we bought the apartment.
Okay. So one of my favorite, I have two favorite examples of generating revenues from physical assets. One is fairly similar. It's an organization that I worked with in Bulgaria, and they were given a 3-story townhouse in the historic part of the city. They occupied for their offices the second floor. They rented out the top floor to small companies, and the bottom floor they rented out to a bar and restaurant. And from that, they earned a substantial amount of their running costs. However, the chief advantage was that the CEO could at any time of the day call downstairs and order for himself and for any American consultants who happened to be nearby a gin and tonic at any time of day. So it was great. And it was not, and you can see that only the operation of their own offices was part of their mission. So these things can be mission related or not mission related. I'm still tripping on this. My second example was a small NGO in Macedonia. that they were the only entity in their small community that had a PowerPoint projector. They were the only one. So when they weren't using it, which was most of the time, they rented it out to the local hotel. When they were having conferences, they rented it to businesses, they rented it to other NGOs. That PowerPoint projector was going all over town, and they were getting income from it. You have to be creative on some of these things. Some of you might have vehicles. Are you using the vehicles all the time? You just need to make sure that you have the capacity to manage these things. Another thing that a lot of NGOs do is, and this might be possibilities for some of you guys, is have revenues from intellectual assets, which means you've developed a directory. A lot of local foundations might develop a directory of all of the NGOs in their communities, or a national entity that serves children might do a directory of all of the children-serving organizations. Well, who is interested in knowing what organizations serve children? Anybody who has any company that has a product that is serving children. Clothing, food, candy, etc., etc., etc. So there might be a way of partnering, and this could be either selling an intellectual asset that you developed or a fee for service. There might be a way of partnering with several for-profit entities that are interested in your constituency that you know more about than they do. In fact, Zeitcher Initiative, who wasn't able to be here, was looking at becoming the survey vehicle for any company in Serbia or international company that wanted to know about the youth market in their region, because they know the youth and they have a way of surveying them. And so they were going to partner with marketing firms that wanted to reach youth or know the opinions of youth in their region. So there are different creative ways of thinking about this. Okay, and let's go to the biggie, okay? Actually starting a business. You heard this from Anna. They have products that they are selling. The way they are doing this is through a separate company, and that company is giving its income to their foundation. I think that's a way of getting around some restrictions that might be in the Serbian law. I've included in your packet the summary that the international organization, the International Center for Nonprofit Law, has done on Serbian law in this area. In almost every country in the world, the issue of nonprofits running businesses is a gray area, meaning it's not clear. All right? This is true in Serbia as well. This is true in Serbia as well. It's not clear. I'm the kind of person who says, give it a try, right? Who says, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? Now, I think some of you who are in the kind of government watchdog situations probably need to be more cautious about this than the others. You may want to get like a separate legal opinion. And the reason that I say this is if the government gets mad at you, they may, use that as a weapon. So I'm just saying, I'm throwing out the cautions there, but my suggestion is that you give it a try. When I was here last time, I was told that a lot of the big organizations like Red Cross have been doing this kind of thing for a long time. And I think there are generally ways to stay within the legal framework. Usually the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to have to pay some taxes on your revenues that you generate from a business. They can be, as I said, mission-related or not mission-related. An example, an NGO is running a restaurant, okay? If it's just running a restaurant, then that's probably not mission-related. If it's running a restaurant but also using that as a community gathering point, or using it if it's a employment training organization, if it's using it to train people to work in the restaurant industry or the food industry, then it's mission related.
Yes. Pa ja moram da se javim. Prvo, moram da se vratim, a ćeš ti Tanja mi prevodiš, da se vratim na taj stan, na primjer, BACIF. Evo, mi recimo isto imamo stan u vlasništvu. Kad je BACIF počeo kod nas. Nismo im iznajmljivali prostor. Znači, meni je ovde sada pitanje do koje granice ćemo mi ići u to da sve unovčavamo i gde će se završiti solidarnost. Iz ženskog centra su izašle mnoge organizacije, koje naravno nikad nisu plaćale prostor. Iz kruga osoba s invaliditetom, BACIF, žene na delu, mislim razne, prosto smo bile nekako mesto inicijativa. Prvi princip nam je solidarnost. Znači, ja sad isto ne razumem. Znači, BACIF izdaje stan u vlasništvu, a uzima sredstva od donatora da bi rentirao stan za sebe. Znači, meni tu nije jasno, znači, zašto BACIF ne kaže donatorima dajte te pare nekoj organizaciji koja nema svoj prostor. Ili da svoj prostor da nekim inicijativama koje će tu da se razvijaju, koje će nešto da napravi. Znači, ja se bojim da ćemo ovim nekako jurišanjem, meni ovo sve liči na neoliberalno jurišanje za novac. Ja se bojim da ćemo time izgubiti vrednost. Za nas je isto pitanje bilo biznis da ili ne. Znači, ja sam se uvijek pitala da li ćemo mi reklamirati firme koje otpuštaju trudnice? Da li ćemo mi biti odgovorni za firme koje otpuštaju radnike? Da se nalaze na svim našim pamfletima? Mi to nećemo. Mi nismo nikada uzeli od biznisa i to je nekako naš princip, nevezano od toga šta nam stoji u statutu. Naprosto ne možemo to da radimo. Da li možemo sa biznisom napravimo neke druge dogovore? Možda. Ali vi dobijate naftna industrija Srbije koja je orobila Srbiju, gde su radnici nezaštićeni, apsolutno dobija nagradu od strane civilnog društva. Razumite vi dok smo mi došli? Znači, to je bilo moje pitanje. I treća stvar koju sam tada kažem jeste da individualne donacije, ok, slažem se, ali one su uvek nekako humanitarno orijentisane. Šta mislite da bi jedna LGBT organizacija mogla da traži humanitarne donacije ili da izađe na ulicu sa kasicom da prikuplja pare?
Jedna je uspela u Šapcu.
Eto, svaka čast. Ali pazi šta je poenta. Mi smo, na primjer, možda bismo mi mogli pre da skupimo pare individualno ako bismo prikazali decu kao žrtve nasilja. To je opet suprotno našim principima. Zato što za nas pitanje nasilja prema ženama je pitanje nasilja prema ženama i pitanje ljudskih prava. Nije pitanje humanitarno. I tu se isto opredeljujemo na koji način ćemo, znači da li mi sada treba u našim kampanjama da uvodimo decu da bismo izazvali nekakvu reakciju ili neka osjećanja. Pa ne, mi to nećemo. Znači, finansijska održivost za nas nije imati što više para, nego držati se onoga što su nam vrednosti.
So I think there are some really good questions in that, and actually the ethical piece and how it fits in with your mission is actually the next thing we're going to talk about. So you're anticipating the next conversation. I think in terms of what are the purposes, for which we're raising funds, and when we have a property, the first piece you were raising, when we have a property and we have the option of using it for different purposes, and many there are a number of NGOs that use, for example, their properties as kind of incubators for other NGOs. That's one purpose for which properties are used. I think the piece that I took from your first set of comments is that clear communication and clear understanding. What are the rules? What are the purposes for which we are using this? What are the purposes for which we are allowing another NGO to use it? Is the other NGO expected to pay rent? If the other NGO is expected to pay rent, is there a contract? That's a business proposition. If it's for the purpose of solidarity and the purpose of incubation and the purpose of bringing NGOs together, then maybe there's not an expectation of paying rent. I think it's just a matter of clarity. What's everybody's expectation, and is everyone clear on that? The second piece, the ethical piece, I'm going to cover in a minute, and what I want to say is what we're doing now is listing all the possibilities, okay? All the possibilities. I would never in a million years suggest that every possibility is appropriate for every NGO. And what you're going to get to do in a few minutes is assess for you and your mission and your capacities and your goals, which of these possibilities is appropriate and which of these is not appropriate. So I want to be clear. I'm introducing the possibilities because we have a diverse group in the room, and different things may be appropriate for different, or will be, not maybe, different things will be appropriate for different organizations. But I want at least to introduce all of the possibilities and then give you the opportunity to filter each of these possibilities through your own mission and your own sense of what is appropriate. Is that fair? Okay? Okay. So just to go back, business enterprises there's some pluses and there's some big pluses and some big minuses, okay? First of all, the revenues that you generate are yours, they're flexible, they're not restricted, you can use them for your top priorities, and they're ongoing. Once you establish, now, they're not guaranteed, but once you have an ongoing business, you have ongoing revenue. Their attractiveness depends on how closely they are related to your mission. Are they appropriate? Whether you have the existing capacity to run a business. Do you have staff who've got that financial knowledge, who have the knowledge of the industry that you're looking at? What will be the startup costs and how much will it cost to maintain the business? Can I use, Andrea, can I use the accounting idea that you had as an example? No. All right. Well, I've thrown out a couple of examples, but let me, well, no, I'll go on. However, the downside, this keeps doing this to me. The downside is that it requires a lot. Starting a business enterprise requires a lot of rigorous work up front. You basically have to develop a business plan. I've put in here, and you're going to get this PowerPoint, so you don't need to scribble it down, but there is an organization called NEST, N-E-S-S-T, that specializes in assisting NGOs in creating businesses, and they have some very good materials. In fact, in putting together my methodology, I actually did a fellowship with NEST to learn about how one looks at establishing business enterprises. But you may want to look at their materials on their website as you're looking at the possibility of establishing a business. I've already talked about the gray area. It could be a gray area for you all here. In the workshop packet, and we are not going to do this as an exercise today, but I want to call your attention to what I think is the first piece in your packet. I got extra pieces here. It looks like this. It says Organizational Sustainability Survey. Okay? This is just something for you to take back to your staff and your organization. Can everybody find it? Sorry. Looks like this. Okay? This is just something for you to take away from today. But take a glance at it before we move on, because I think it will be valuable to you and your teams within your organization, maybe to take part of a board meeting, however you want to do this. And they'll get electronic copies of all of these afterwards, right? Okay, so you can send them out, however you want to do it. I would strongly urge you at some point, maybe before you go through the actual sustainability exercise, to survey individually the members of your core team, whether that's, your kind of executive team and your board, whoever you define as your core team. What can be really interesting is to also use this with your constituents, with the people that you serve, and use this as an external survey. And just ask people to fill this out individually without talking with one another. What are their impressions on how your organization measures up on each of these elements? Because you might be surprised. You might not be. You might find that everybody thinks you're strong in one area and weak in another area. You might find that you're all over the map, right? That one person thinks you're strong and one person thinks you're weak. If you have areas where you're clearly strong and you're clearly weak, that's easy. What that means is you need to go back and shore up those areas where you're weak. That's easy. If you find that it's all over, that people have all different impressions, that's harder. Because it could mean two things. It could mean that you're, maybe not as strong as you thought in a lot of the different areas, or it could mean you're just not communicating yourself very well. And you'll have to go back and do that analysis. But I provide this to you in your packet simply as a tool to look at your organizational sustainability. And I also know you've had lots of other consultants coming in and trying to deal with these various pieces. So this can just be like an audit, like a quick audit to say, okay, how are we doing? All right? So I said we were going to talk more about the two pieces of organizational sustainability that I consider to be absolutely essential before you even take your team through the financial sustainability methodology. So one of the things that I know is that about half of you in this room don't actually have strategic plans. I'm going to say this as strongly as I can say it. Do not try to do the financial sustainability exercises until you have first put together at least a basic strategic plan. I think you'll see why as we go through the next couple of days, but you really can't do the financial sustainability until you have a strategic plan. I see Tanya nodding, so I'm going to ask Tanya again. Sorry. Actually, why don't I pick on Andrea? Andrea, can you talk about why you guys needed a strategic plan before you went through this process, or whether it would have been possible to go through this process without having had a strategic plan?
I don't think that we have a chance to go thoroughly the whole process without strategic plan. But as you know,
and why? Why would that
we had it already. We revised it yearly, and we are actually having also the budget plan. So you are actually,
No. We'll talk a little bit about some of the specific reasons, but I know in the case of Trog, they knew what programs they wanted to add, what programs they wanted to drop, what programs they wanted to grow, what programs they wanted to stay level. And without that, you really can't project what your financial needs will be. And so it was that first piece that the strategic plan gave them. Now, before you have a strategic plan, you have to have a mission. My understanding is that all the organizations in this room have a mission statement. Are there any organizations in the room that do not have a mission statement? It's okay. This is like, we're a self-help group here, okay? These guys back over here, they're going to close their eyes now. ISC is going to close their eyes. Okay, is there anybody in the room who doesn't have a mission statement? Raise your hand. Okay, that's what I thought, and that's good. Now, here's a test. All right? I will buy a glass of wine or a beer at our social afterwards for the first person who can stand up and recite their organization's mission statement. Just what I thought. My money is safe. Anybody can anybody do it? I will buy you a beer. Nope. Okay. This is universal. Everybody's trying to remember their mission statement. Oh, that's okay. Serbian is fine. Yeah, you can do it in Serbian. You don't have to do it in English. Anybody who can stand up in Serbian and recite your mission statement. They're pointing at you. Introduce yourself. You guys have to put on your name badges for me.
Znači, verujući da je život bez nasilja osnovno ljudsko pravo, pružamo podršku ženama žrtvama nasilja i individualni institucionalni odgovor na nasilje, čime ojačavamo ženski pokret i građansko društvo u celini.
Yay! Woo! Okay, thank you. And that's very impressive. And what I want to say is that your homework for tonight, I might have other homework. One piece of homework for tonight, everybody needs to memorize at least 1 or 2 sentences of your organization's mission statement. In the U.S., we call this the elevator speech. Do you know this phrase? And what it means is you are in an elevator with strangers, and someone says, "What does your organization do?" And what you don't know is that stranger in the elevator with you is Bill Gates, or Vladi Divac, or someone who you would love to tell how wonderful your organization is. But because you can't spit it out, you'll never have that opportunity. So I'm going to quiz you. I really am. First thing tomorrow morning, I'm going to point to some random person and say, tell me your mission statement. I need everybody to do me a favor, which is if you haven't put on your name badges, do it and write it large, and I still may not be able to see it, I still might have to squint. But that helps me. Then I can pick on people. Okay. The mission statement really should be the beginning of everything you do. And I thought that was a very clear mission statement from the Women's Center. I understood it. It was inspirational, and it was clear. The mission statement says why your organization exists. Your strategic plan then says what you will do to achieve your mission. And the sustainability plan then says how you will finance those activities. Does that make sense? Why, what, how? I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the mission statement, but think of this not as why it's important to have a mission statement, but rather why it's important for you to know in your head what that mission statement is. It articulates your unique role, why that role is important, and what is your goal or vision for the future. I think your Women's Center mission did that. I think it did all of those things. You should be able to articulate your mission in a few sentences. In the elevator with Bill Gates. If your mission statement of your organization now is too long, just find the key words to memorize out of it for tomorrow morning. It also provides clarity around what you do. It helps build consensus within your constituency. Everybody is agreed on why your organization is there. it helps you be consistent. So if the chief program person rides up the elevator with Bill Gates and the chief financial person rides down the elevator with Bill Gates, he gets the same message from both of you. Am I shouting? Is it too loud? Am I talking too loud? It's good? Okay, all right. It's efficient because it helps you say, okay, is this within our mission? And then my most important reason for a clear and concise mission statement, I will have to explain. It's the phrase I call death by opportunity. We are all working with NGOs. We're working with NGOs because we want to do good in the world. We are all people who, who are not, except for our board members, we chose not to be in business. We chose to do something that is a broad service for the community in some way or another. And because of that, we are all in our basic personalities people who want to help, people who want to do good, people, whatever, right? We have a different personality type. And because of that, it's extremely difficult for us to say no. If something is going to do good for someone out there, it's very hard for us to say no. So what does that lead to? It leads to what I call death by opportunity. It means you start taking on this and this and this and this because they're all good things, and then your organization collapses under its own weight. And also, by the way, that's number 2 that keeps you up at night. If you're the CEO and you keep taking on more and more and more, you will eventually collapse. So that's why it's important to not only have a mission statement, but know the mission statement and spend time referring back to it. It's the starting point for every decision, strategy, and direction of the organization, and it's also key for making financial decisions. All right, strategic plan. One more time. Raise your hand if your organization has a strategic plan. Look, they left. They knew. All right, they left. Raise your hand if your organization has a strategic plan. You can raise it higher than that. Okay, good. And raise your hand if your organization does not have a strategic plan at this point. It's okay. We know you don't. We know because they sent me a list. Half of you do and half of you don't. We're all trying to decide whether what we have is a strategic plan. Okay. What you're gonna have by 2 o'clock is at least the outlines of a strategic plan. All right? So, what is in a strategic plan? All right, part of the problem of why people don't have strategic plans is that people out there, especially consultants, have made this magical, complicated thing. It's not a magical, complicated thing. It's basic, it's easy. You all can do it. You will have the outline of one by 2 o'clock, I promise. So what does it do? It comes from your mission statement, and it articulates your path from where you are now to your vision. That's all it does. It's not complicated. It says what programs and strategies are you going to operate to accomplish your mission, and it says why you think those activities will accomplish your mission. Okay? That why is this thing that's out there in consulting world called theory of change, which makes it sound mysterious or academic or something like that, and it's really not. All it is why do we think these programs that we're running are going to make a difference toward our mission? That's all it is. It should set the goals for the next 3 to 5 years. Now, a lot of times people say to me, I can't do that. The world is too unpredictable. Well, I'm sure you've heard this phrase, but if you don't know where you're going, how will you know whether you get there, right? So a strategic plan should not be a straitjacket. It shouldn't be something that confines you. It should be a living document that you can change if circumstances change. But that's not an excuse for not having one. You need to know where you're going. Look, this thing is now caught on my shoe. I know I'm going to fall over at some point during this exercise. It should talk about your goals and objectives, your theory of change, evaluation. What will be the indicators? Not 100 indicators, maybe 3 to 5 indicators that will tell you whether you've gotten there or not, and how are you going to measure. What are your current programs? What are your new programs? And you guys don't need to be, there's a worksheet in here that has all this stuff. Are you going to discontinue any of your programs? And these are the basics that we are going to use for discussing the outlines of a strategic plan. So let me go ahead and call your attention to this thing that's called Strategic Planning Worksheet. Everybody find this one? These all should be in order as I'm presenting them, so I'm sorry they're not clipped together, but they should be kind of in order. So I'm just giving you ideas of different kinds of businesses that different kinds of organizations have come up with that in some way or another relate to their missions. Now you don't have to relate it to your missions. Trog was looking at one thing that was sort of mission related and one thing that was sort of not mission related, and I guess I won't share too much about that. But you saw my example yesterday, the organization that was already had a fleet of volunteers going out into the community and had a transportation system for serving people with AIDS, and then they took that and turned it into delivering meals for a profit and providing other home health services for a profit. So what I'm going to do now is ask you for about half an hour to work in teams and to, oh shoot, I forgot to cover something very, very important. Hold on, we're not quite there yet. What I want to do is talk about, I'm not going to use my PowerPoint for a second. I want you to pull this out. It's called Consideration in Assessing Revenue Sources. And it's what you were talking about. All right, can everybody find this one? Okay, what I'm going to have you do in a minute is look at all the revenue sources we've talked about and brainstorm with your team what you might be able to do in each of those sources. The way I want you to think about what's appropriate and not appropriate for your organization is this set of criteria. Okay? So, does it relate to our mission? If we develop this source, are the revenues flexible and long-term, or are they inflexible and short-term? How difficult will it be and how costly to us will it be to start up this kind of revenue source? You heard Anna earlier talk about how difficult it had been from a staff standpoint to do some of the things they're doing. Those are real costs. What are the continuing costs to us of maintaining? If you start a business, you've got, all of those ongoing maintenance costs. I think one of the biggest ones is what is our capacity internally to do this? What is our capacity internally to do this? Will we have to hire new people? Would we have to develop new capacities? You heard Tanya talking about how they're going to have to get smarter and have to learn about how to invest endowment funds. You're going to have to hire people who know how to run a particular kind of business. From a public relations standpoint, is this going to give us positive visibility or negative visibility? And then any other things that are important to your NGO given your mission. So at least 3 of you in this room have an important mission of holding the government's feet to the fire, holding government accountable. Are you going to take money in whatever form, from an entity whose reputation is opposed to your mission? Right? I don't think so. Not appropriate for your organization. So, given all of those considerations and anything else that might be particularly important to your organization, I want you now to take out this worksheet. It says revenue up at the top. Okay? And then down this side, it lists all of the things we've talked about, all of the different revenue sources. What I want you to do is be pretty optimistic, okay? And I've got year 5 here. If for you it's year 3, whatever. What I want you to do is think about in 3 years or 5 years, whatever term you're on, if this revenue source is appropriate for you, so you will not have numbers, you won't have numbers in every, column, in every row here. But if the revenue source is appropriate for you, if it's one you want to develop over 5 years, if it's one that's possible for you to develop over 5 years, and remember, more is possible than you think is possible. That was Tanya's lesson. They got almost half again as much in endowment as they thought they were going to get, right? So more is possible than you think is possible. If everything goes well and you behave in a smart manner and things go right, how much money do you think you could raise from each of these sources 3 years from now, if that's your horizon, 5 years from now, if that's your horizon. If everything goes right, what's the maximum number you think you could put in those boxes? On your mark, get set, go. You have half an hour with your teams.